Just because it's a WNBA show doesn't mean I can't be mad for March. Welcome back to PHNX Mercury Podcast. I am your host, Erica Day, and I'm joined by my QB1, PG1, whatever you really want to call them. Depends on the day, I feel like. Steven Prejean Garner. Steven, I also heard you're like in the running to be the head coach of the Suns. Is this true?
I have not had any meetings. That's news to me.
But your name's in the hat, right?
Sure.
That's what I heard through Eric. I saw the graphic. I mean, I honestly should have had Shane get the graphic ready just so we could show the people, you know?
I wish. That's not in the cards at the moment.
Oh, Shane's getting it ready right now.
Of course, naturally.
Well, nonetheless, though, I mean, I feel like you would make a pretty good coach. You've made some pretty convincing arguments on this show for certain moves in the WNBA, and I feel like, you know, I don't watch the Sun show full time, but I feel like it can't be any different over there, right?
Man, I do okay. Got a lot to figure out if I'm talking about coaching, but I do okay, though. I know a little bit about basketball.
Period. Well, thanks for hopping in with us in the chat. I see David in there, Lindsay, Andy. Thanks you all for joining us on this fine, what's today? Wednesday afternoon.
Mm-hmm.
And we got Shane behind the Mac working the X's and O's today. I'm super pumped. I know Steven's super pumped. We got a big week in terms of just basketball with the NCAA tournament starting. Arizona's going to the WBIT. That's okay. Nothing, you know, nothing to be ashamed. I'm going to talk some good talk about the NIT and WBIT here in literally 15 minutes. So, you know, no shame there. What's up, Kevo? I see you tapping in with us from just a room away. But anyways, Steven, how you been doing?
Been doing good. It's been very busy with Unrivaled wrapping up, and obviously the Mercury having their three best players all involved with teams that had expectations. They would come short of those, but I think they all had fairly solid showings considering this is off-season workouts, just getting game-like reps in.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, I guess I should have started with this. I mean, our own Kahleah Copper, Unrivaled champion, like... you know, and I hate to do this, but, you know, ESPN did those little rankings and it put her and Nola on check for the whole season. Okay.
Oh,
so if this is the case to where, you know, Ka just needs that little underdog kick in the butt, I'm picking the Mercury to pick last or to finish last.
How do you, and I say this respectfully.
No, you're 100% right. What I already know. And yes.
Like, it doesn't take, like, the craziest knowledge of women's basketball to realize they have a lot of winners on that team.
Period.
What you think they was going to just fold? Like genuinely, I just never understood it. And I think Candace Parker was as puzzled as anybody when realizing the lack of attention that Kahleah Copper and insert team here. Put some respect on them Rosebud's names.
Well, and I know these new fans were unfamiliar with a healthy Chelsea Gray, but now that they've gotten a real opportunity to see that live and in the flesh, I've seen the commentary regarding Chelsea Gray really shift over the winter. So I'm thankful that she got her healthy genes back up so she could show the world that she really is the best point guard in the country. And it's really not close.
She is. There's players that are really good. There's players that are great. And then there's players that always rise to the occasion. Chelsea aligns with the very last thing that I said. Like, it doesn't matter if she's hurt. Doesn't matter if it's 3-on-3.
The sky could be falling, and Chelsea's still trying to be out there doing what it takes to win the damn game.
She's just built for it. She's one of the best point guards of all time for multiple reasons, and I think that big game showing up ability is pretty much trumps anything else because she's just limitless when the lights get the brightest.
Yeah, and I see the Lindsay comment, point God. Yeah, I mean, like the nickname really suits her well. Like, there's no one else that doesn't like her. You know, I'm going to talk about Alyssa's ability to facilitate the ball here in a little bit. And yes, Alyssa is a great facilitator, but she is not a true point guard the way that Chelsea Gray is. And there's just very few players that still play the style of basketball that Chelsea Gray is playing. And to do it at her age after the injuries that she's had, really, really freaking impressive.
Yeah, I don't know if there's another guard that strikes the balance as well as she does. It's not just scoring. It's not just threes. It's not just middies. She's checking off so many different boxes while also controlling the offense for her team in a way that no other point guard in the league does. It's just different. It's just different when she's got the ball in her hands.
Well, and like we talk about players that make everyone else rise to the occasion. Chelsea Gray is the epitome of that and making her, you know, teammates better. I saw your short on Angel this morning, and like same thing with her. Like, and you know, her endearing antics, like, yes, that makes everyone around them want to be better. And so you got to play a team full of players that just want everybody around them to be as good as they can possibly be. And how can you doubt a team like that?
Exactly. That's leadership. And when you have someone that has that type of gravity, that type of big game showing up ability, it gives everybody else a dynamic to calm down around because they're able to control the chaos and really put people in positions to be as successful as they can be. And obviously, Angel is not a point guard, but with the way that she defends and the way that she does all of the things in between the game, that's very much an all-time great type of dynamic. It's those type of players are cut from a specific cloth, and it always aligns with winning. And you look at Chelsea's won everywhere she's gone. You look at Angel, she's won everywhere she's gone. The examples are there.
Yep. Well, I mentioned at the top of the episode, but it's March Madness right now.
It is.
And, you know, I think I mentioned to you when we first started this podcast that my one true love in life really is college basketball. And, you know, now we are sitting here and March Madness starts tomorrow for the women. And I'm super amped. I don't think there's ever been a tournament where there are so many different teams that could take the title. I think that there's so much parity in women's basketball right now. And, you know, I see everyone talking about the March Madness brackets, and I always just assume that they're talking about women's brackets now because, you know, we outrated the men's tournament last year. And I think that this tournament has the capability of doing even better numbers because of the names and everything that's, you know, all the rematches possible from even just this last season. You have USC and UConn that could happen again, UCLA, and God knows literally everyone under the entire tournament bracket. It would basically be a rematch. You know, University of South Carolina has taken more losses this year than they have in the last 3 years combined, I want to say. It's just been an insane year in terms of college basketball. So I'm really, really excited to see what happens with the women's tournament the rest of the season. But I do want to talk about some of the runs that our, you know, Mighty Mercury's own have gone on. And I think we should start with the unicorn, Satou Sabally. And there's really a particular reason why I want to start with Satou. And it's mostly because if you ask any women's college basketball fan, they will tell you that Satou Sabally and Sabrina Ionescu and the rest of that 2020 Oregon Duck squad was just plain robbed of a national championship. And you can say this and you can say that, and I can sit here and tell you all day that they were a lock for a national championship, and you don't have to believe me, but they were very much the overwhelming favorite. And I think the thing that everyone doesn't talk about in regards to that particular tournament team is the fact that it probably would have accelerated the women's basketball craze very quickly. I mean, that was a team that had everything and was well coached and was really fun to watch.
If that team had the attention that women's basketball does now, it would have been such a great in addition to with everything that Angel and Caitlin have done over the last 3 years now, and everything that Juju is doing now, everything that Paige has brought to the pot as well. That would have been such a great kind of bouncing off of one another to where you're just getting an understanding of all the many different type of talents that women's basketball has to offer. It's not just guards, it's not just forwards, it's not just centers. It's a nice mix of all of those things, different styles of play across each one of the individual players, yet alone the respective teams that they were playing with at the time. And it just really speaks to the direction that women's basketball has been headed in now.
Yeah. I hate to say it again, but it really was like point blank highway robbery that year. I know it was
that was tough.
That COVID thing that, was what, like almost 5 years to the day now. But like literally it was highway robbery, and that team deserved better. And I seriously think that, like I said, the women's basketball craze just would have started at a much earlier rate. Y'all would have known who Caitlin and Angel were far, far before that Final Four run, is all I'm trying to say. That said, though, they did go on a little Final Four run in 2019. And I wanted to ask, Steven, do you know who ousted them in the Final Four?
That is a great question, and I'm drawing a blank right now. Was it Stanford?
Shane, do you have the picture ready?
And
do you know who that is in that Baylor jersey?
Talk to me.
That's Kalani Brown. And Kalani Brown went on to win the national title that year with that Baylor team. And on the right there is Satou Sabally.
Yeah, of course.
It's tough, huh?
That's
a tough picture.
That is a throwback. That's taking me all the way back to that moment.
If Satou's watching right now, I'm sorry if we triggered any bad memories. No Sabalys were harmed in the making of this video, but they were harmed that day.
At least it's one of her teammates that's involved in a positive way.
Yeah, for real. But yeah, that said, I mean, that 2019 run by that team, it was a start for them, and it kind of set the precedence for the following year for them to go back to the national, on a national run. And like I said, highway robbery. But Baylor was, able to do it in 2019 with Kalani Brown. I'm not actually sure who else was on that 2019 roster, but it was I do believe it was a pretty deep roster.
Was Dejanay on that team?
Actually,
Dejanay and
they never won a title at Baylor.
Oh, okay.
I only know that because I watched her.
Yeah. So that was after the Kalani era.
I think it was the year after.
Because it was her and Dee Richards. I remember that team was fun to watch. They did not win the championship though. You're right. That's right.
Yep.
Yeah, because Dee had the multiple injuries. Yeah. Now that I'm thinking back on that pocket of time where
And Dejanay might get mad if you bring up her time at Baylor with that no call foul. I don't want to make anybody mad. You know what I mean? So
absolutely.
I think everybody's been getting triggered bringing up like the old NCAA tournament runs, and I can't say I blame them really. Like, if you worked your entire 4-year career to do one thing and it didn't happen because of a missed foul call. And I mean, you could say the same thing about the tournament last year, right?
I was just about to say, has that not been a common theme the last like 3-4 women's tournaments in particular, where the officiating is not matching the level of play that's on the court, and it's coming at the detriment of the product of the game that we're supposed to be watching that's entertaining?
Literally same story, different book.
It's a mess. Yeah, and copy and paste that to the W as well, with the way that the finals rounded out this past season.
Well, I do have a couple other just little quick fun facts here.
Yep.
Catherine Westbeld was on the 2018 Notre Dame team that won it all. I don't know that we've even said her name on this podcast, but join the list of foreigners that they've decided to sign to the team, and she's a winner, and I think that says a lot. And that she started 31 out of 37 games that season on a very, very deep Notre Dame team. So I mean, if that doesn't scream talent,
that was Arike, Marina,
I believe so,
Jackie.
Yep.
Yeah, that team. Needless to say, if you go to Notre Dame, you're cut from a certain winning cloth.
Period.
Yeah.
And then if you're Celestial, you might know this fun fact, but Celeste Taylor did go to the Elite Eight and lost with Texas to South Carolina. Really tough tournament draw, I have to say. Okay. But then she also has the NCAA tournament record for most steals in a tournament game with 10.
That's not surprising. I knew that, forgot it, and when you said it, it hit me again. Yeah, she's
a dog.
Those Ohio State teams with her and JC, like, you couldn't dribble the basketball. They were picking up full court, and they were running and jumping, pressing all over the place. It was not fun to be a guard trying to go up against those two.
When my Arizona coach talks about full court defense, she's talking about that Ohio State team for real.
For sure.
Yeah.
They're just a bunch of dogs.
And I told you guys I would bring up the WNIT, WBIT. Also, I've had a lot of people ask me about the WBIT and where it actually came from. the WNIT was not sponsored by the NCAA in any way, so teams had to pay to go participate in it. The WBIT is fully sponsored by the NCAA, and teams get paid to be a part of it. So if you are going to go to either tournament, you want to go to the WBIT. I hope that one day there doesn't have to be this argument about it and that the NIT can just be the NCAA's as well, because I think it's kind of crap that the men's tournament is called the NIT and the women's, like, I don't know if it was their committee was just holding the name hostage. I'm not exactly sure of the details on why it had to be called the WBIT, but I know it's caca poo poo and they need to figure that out, because I think it's bull crap nonsense that the tournaments have to be called something else. I have to clarify almost every time I bring up the WBIT what the heck I'm talking about, because nobody knows what I'm even speaking about, and that's really frustrating considering this is a type of tournament that's been around for a really long time. It's a secondary NCAA tournament, like it's, you know. But anyways, all that said, Kahleah Copper, Rutgers.
Yeah. I have to mention C. Vivian Stringer if you're talking about Rutgers, but yes, absolutely.
Full WNIT winners. And, you know, I heard some people in this studio, actually, just when I got here, talking crap about WNIT and WBIT. And it is hard, period, to win 4 games in a row. Period. It's hard, especially in the postseason when everybody wants to win. Everybody's playing for their last opportunity to play. And it's really difficult to win a postseason tournament. So, you know, I think when you play for a team like Rutgers that isn't in a Power 4 conference, you're not going to get that automatic bid just for being good.
Yeah, it's nearly impossible.
Yeah, you pretty much have to win your conference championship, which, you know, there's been all sorts of discourse for many years about conference tournaments and if that should really be the automatic bid and blah, 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 blah. That's the way it is. That's the way it is. So it was really difficult to get a bid. So the fact that they went on to win the WNIT is as impressive of a feat as it would have been had they gone to the NCAA tournament and gone to an Elite 8 or Final 4, in my opinion.
Yeah, and that's where you need the coverage from mainstream media platforms that helps to, no different than with the NIT, like you mentioned, document these players, these programs that are finding success, even if it's not coming on the national tournament stage, because that's where you brought in the understanding and the just general awareness, which is supposed to be the job of those platforms to do that. So those women are continuing to be done a disservice as far as that goes. That goes for all the way back in the mid-2000s when Kahleah was at the peak of her college powers with Rutgers to even now, like you just got done speaking to.
Literally, Sunday was the selection show for WBIT. They told us that the selection show was at 8 o'clock. It was going to be live stream on the NCAA website. First of all, it was not a live stream because I could fast forward to the end of the damn live stream. So
that's a problem.
That's a problem. And when you don't take these things seriously as a league, the teams don't take it seriously either. And I think that's probably my most frustrating part of this whole thing is just, you know, you want teams to put their best foot forward, but then you, as the organization that literally pays for this event to take place, you don't take it seriously. That is pretty frustrating. So I'll be watching for the WBIT to be improving over the next couple of years. Hopefully I don't have to watch it firsthand through the University of Arizona, but, you know, we take what we can get in this house, you know. I know a certain other Fork school that didn't go to either of them. So, you know, it sucks, you know.
Shade is crazy.
Hey,
they're playing in the, what is it, the Crown?
Hey, I have to say, in regards to ASU men's tournament, if I was a men's team and I wasn't going to go to the NCAA tournament, I wouldn't want to go to the NIT. I would want to go to the Crown tournament in Vegas. Sign me up, please. Like, I just, after the Pac-12 tournament was wiped away out of our, you know, bare hands, you know, send me the Crown tournament. I don't care. It sounds like a blast. Any reason to go to Vegas. I mean, Jesus. Anywho, any other runs that you can think of off the top of your head? I know you were kind of blanking when I brought it up, but maybe all this talk.
Nah, we talked about the ones that I would have thought of from this team in particular.
Yeah.
I think the loudest one being the Oregon run, of course.
Highway robbery.
Yeah.
It's okay. I could go on. I could probably talk about that for like 6 business days of just how unjust that entire situation was.
Yeah.
You know? But nonetheless, shit happens, then you die. And But
it's true.
I texted Steven earlier, and I was like, Steven, we got off-season discussions, more of it. And the one question, everybody's been in my DMs, my mentions, every time I run into one of you guys in person, overwhelmingly, they ask me the same question over and over again. And I thought Chris, if you don't get out of here with that Duke will win it all nonsense, I will have Shane put you in timeout so
you have to
freaking fast.
There's a couple of screws loose.
I already know.
Yeah.
I know damn good and well the screws are loose there. But that being said, he knows not to come on this particular podcast talking about Duke winning it all.
Tell him.
This is not the one. We can talk about the Duke women, but not Cooper Flagg and them will not be taking it all. I don't know if you know who they're scheduled to have to maybe face, Chris, but it is my squad. So I would like you to watch your tone in that chat there. Anyways, the overwhelming question, everybody's been calling, texting, carrier pigeoning me. Who is our starting point guard? And I really thought we answered this in the last episode, but I guess being that everybody's still asking me, we didn't do a good enough job of painting the picture for everybody. So I guess let's talk about the starting five and what you see out of what you want to start with the offense.
Yeah.
Okay.
We can start with the offense. I think it's going to be a lot of the big three initiating offense, playing off of stops more than anything else. I think is a plan for their offense. And with that in mind, it doesn't matter which one of those three is bringing it up because all three of them are above average, if not elite, at their respective positions, grabbing rebounds. And if they're playing off of those type of stops, that just unlocks different types of ways in which they can play their offense. It doesn't have to be bring it up, get set up in the half court, and now get people in the positions, and now we're going to start to attack. It can just be them attacking for 24 full seconds. Get it across the half court line within 2 or 3 seconds of the rebound. Somebody go get a paint touch in some capacity, and now everybody's just playing off of rotating defense that's not set matchup-wise. I think that's supposed to be a big part of the template that this team is supposed to operate off of offensively. And with that in mind, you don't need a point guard, someone has to get the ball to them specifically to bring it up the court, and then we can get into positions and then run actions. I think this is a more modern style of basketball that they're supposed to be working towards. We saw it a little bit we saw it a lot of it actually with the New York Liberty team that won a championship last season. Jonquel Jones grabbing boards and just taking it up the court with Sabrina Ionescu on the floor. No different with Breanna Stewart, obviously, but Najelani doing the same thing with them. Like, there's multiple players being able to do that just allows you to unlock a different element of your offense versus playing solely in the half court all the time. Now, I don't think they can completely duck just not having a point guard in the rotation, and that's where Sevu Usman comes into play. Someone that can play point guard in that traditional sense. Might not be the best shooter, but makes solid decisions, runs an efficient pick and roll, and with the pieces that she'll have around her with the Mercury, that's going to make her job a whole lot easier and make the strengths of her game be that much more loud than they were in seasons past.
And I want to say with Sevi, I kind of remember her being pretty good on the defensive end as well.
Yeah, she's not the guard. Yeah, not the biggest, but as far as the guard specific type of skills to be successful defensively,
she can play some good
she
on
has
the ball.
that in there some.
Okay,
absolutely.
Period.
And that naturally gets an uptick when you have Alyssa Thomas around you in some capacity, because she's not always at the rim. Same thing with Satou, and then in the third layer, in addition to that, is obviously Kahleah Copper. And if she's on the court with Kalani Brown, now you got Kalani Brown just sitting in the paint. So there are multiple layers to being able to insulate Sev, but also being able to implore her to be her best version of herself as well.
Do you think that early in the season we're going to see a lot of changes with the iterations of the lineups we get from Nate? Or do you think that he's going to kind of run with the same thing and just kind of let chemistry work itself out?
I think that's a good question. I think there's going to be some kind of working itself out going on just as they figure out how the pieces fit together, as they change the style of play, because they're not going to play the same way that they did last season, just because the roster is completely different. So there's going to be some kind of bumps, some ups and downs on the offensive side. But naturally, on the defensive end is where I feel like they're going to hang their hat most.
Agreed.
In terms of identity. And they're also going to be more quickly aligned on that end in terms of moving on the string too. So I think that's going to help them a lot naturally to break up we don't necessarily have our offense quite together yet, but if we're just playing off of stops all the time, that's a way for you to kind of
really easy to score in transition.
Makes your job a whole lot more easy as an offensive unit.
Well, and as I was preparing for the show, I was going really elbow deep in Alyssa Thomas's stats.
Yeah.
You know, there's only one season where she even averaged enough threes to have any percentage. And so I think that that's a really interesting player to throw into this particular system with Nate Tibbetts and the way he likes to play and, you know, let people shoot, for lack of a better term. And so I think we're going to see some really interesting sets come out of Alyssa in particular, where she isn't shooting where maybe we think she was going to shoot, and she is facilitating to someone. Sami, literally the list goes on and on. But I think that, you know, Alyssa is going to fit into the system a lot more different than a lot of people are really anticipating.
Yeah, I think this roster is set up to be very successful playing off of the ways Alyssa already was playing.
Right.
Just has a little bit more upside in terms of the top end talents around her. And then you add snipers like Sami around her as well, and a couple of other players that are going to be on either minimum deals or training camp contracts that ultimately make the roster that will fit a specific niche in being able to shoot off of movement and shoot off of standstills based off of the ways that their top 3 players have to be guarded.
Yeah, and you know, while we're on that little bit of a conversation, I guess let's have a little tiny cap space conversation. And before everyone in this chat knows I am not that good at math, okay? So before we start any of this, just know that I use Spot Track and my brain and a calculator for this. So if it's a little off, it's probably my fault, and you can come to my mentions anytime and yell at me about it. One thing I'm never going to be heard about is getting told I'm not good at math. That's literally true. But all that said, the Phoenix Mercury have just under about $100,000 left in cap space. Obviously, we're getting pretty close to training camp. Like, most teams kind of have all their training camp contracts. I feel like, other than the Connecticut Sun, obviously, have their training camp contracts really like worked out. But I do feel the Mercury is waiting on one more piece. And we've talked about Emma Miesemann a lot. I feel like once a month we bring up the, you know,
since the Olympic break, we've been bringing up Emma's name,
and you know, but I think Emma would be a perfect addition to this particular core group, and I think that this year presents such an, you know, interesting opportunity, because, you know, it's not like she needs that supermax contract, and she could still sign somewhere else of her choosing next year and get a way greater contract. So I think, you know, you're not missing that much by signing, you know, a $99,000 contract. I don't know exactly what the details of that would be, but I think, you know, as a player, you wouldn't be missing out on that much, and you could come play for a really good team with really good resources that is a real contender this year.
Yeah. I wonder what the fit would be for Emma if she was here now. Like, last season, naturally, we talked about them needing someone that brought them something different in the front court in particular, not necessarily to always play with Brittany Griner, but to play when Brittany Griner was resting, whether that person was playing with friend of the show, Natasha Mack, or if that player was playing center outright by themselves. And naturally, last season, Emma would have checked off a ton of boxes for the team. Like, she probably would have started. It would have shifted things for them, but especially when Rebecca Allen went down, roles got shifted. Players had to play to certain roles and kind of have to punch up a little bit more, and they just didn't have the upside to do so, which naturally ended the season in sweeping fashion against the Timberwolves. But I think that Emma this season with this team, I would like it before anything else for the simple fact that it wouldn't be some other contender that got her. Start there. You start there, and then after that layer, because I think that's very important, just thinking about matchups and things like that, it would be good for them to have someone like Emma as another option for Nate Tibbetts to have. But
I already know you're about to bring up injuries, and I just think we should just forget that word even exists.
To keep in mind. So the more options you have, the more opportunity you give yourself to kind of offset any potential time or minutes lost due to injury. So I like that perspective of it. But also, it feels like this team is going to be playing a lot through their front court pieces rather than through the backcourt.
Agreed.
And that's, again, a very modern style of play. Emma is a player that's excelled at that since she won the WNBA Finals MVP in 2019. And she's a player that, even when she went to the Chicago Sky, was starting next to Candace Parker. And it was very much Spider-Man meme. You make a backdoor pass here, You initiate off of a rebound here. You unlock things and movement for Kahleah Copper here. Same thing with Allie Quigley. Same thing with Courtney Vandersloot. I could see a lot of those traits that made Emma the prized player that she is, the highly touted player that she is, coming into the Mercury context in ways in which that would be dynamic. And I think that's something that would help a lot too. I question though, like my biggest question with Emma would be the prioritization, first of all. Is this something that she's actually like genuinely considering right now? Will she wait until next season after the CBA and everything is established and she knows what she's getting herself into? And then the other big thing for me with Emma would be, what role is she looking for?
Yeah.
Is she going to be willing to be a sixth player again? She's done that already. She's won doing that already. Does she want to be a starter? Like, there's a lot of kind of questions in that. Is she going to want more than just a one-year deal as well? Because no one's really signing more than one-year deals right now for obvious reasons. So there's a lot to think about with Emma, but naturally, you talk about adding talent. You can never go wrong with adding talent if the talent is willing to accept a specific role, especially knowing the type of talents that are going to be surrounding her if she comes to the Mercury.
I have to laugh, though, at your little, like, we don't want her to go to any other contender because literally every time a trade happens or a free agent signing happens, I'm like, oh, no.
I was genuinely worried about the Minnesota Lynx swooping in to take her after they got the Tebow family to move from D.C. to Minnesota. Like, on the coaching side, that's already
already selfish. I'm going to say it. The Liberty, I'm looking at you, Liberty. Ellie, if you're watching, you're selfish. And you should be ashamed of yourself. You got to take everything, just everything fun about the league and just take it over to the Liberty. What the heck?
Yeah.
I guess not everything, but selfish.
I don't know if they would make that call, honestly, and that's surprising, shocking. I know they call on every single.
Good for them to actually stay away from this one, Liberty. Y'all don't even know her name. Forget about it.
They're even more deep in the front court than the Mercury are. So it's like, again, same questions. What's the fit? What's the role? And is she gonna be willing to accept whatever amount of minutes they're able to find for her because it's not gonna naturally just be there. So.
Well, hopefully they just stay selfish and stay over there and stay to themselves. And again, just forget her name even exists. And same with you, Las Vegas. I don't need you pick. Y'all got Jewel Lloyd, okay? Just forget Emma exists.
I mean, with New York, they just got Tosh. So.
That's what I'm screaming.
Yeah.
And, I think it's so funny because, like, I was mad about that. Like, as if she was going to come back. You know what I mean? Like, I was, like, angry. Like, how dare you, Liberty? Again, as if she's going to return. Like, that's probably, I would say, fresh out of the cards. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
In this particular circumstance.
Yeah, it's if you heard on the OG's podcast, the tone was very much not coming back. The tone was very much.
I got y'all scheduled on my calendar, and I cannot. I don't even want to go to the Liberty game at this point because it sounds very scary. Like the Liberty team was already really damn good. Has my favorite big in the league in JJ. I mean, you just got such amazing pieces up there, and then you go out, and I know I just talked so highly of Chelsea Gray, and everything I said about her is true. But you go out and you literally get my favorite point guard in the league. Are you serious right now? Yeah, the New York Liberty, they made an enemy out of me this week.
Yeah, it's not going to be fun playing them, and that just got that much harder. Of course.
But
of course.
I'm very mad at the Liberty as a whole.
Of course. Yeah, for sure. They're not going to be fun to play. It's not going to be fun if...
Nothing's going to be enjoyable about it.
No, because they like the weaknesses just got that much harder to find and exploit, even if you are able to find.
I feel like every time someone talks crap about the Liberty, it's like, oh, they're not a tough team. Name a tougher player.
And that's the thing with them losing Kayla Thornton in the expansion draft. They lost. It's not just KT's ability to be physical, but there's a mental component that a finesse-heavy team like the Liberty needed.
Yeah.
And they just went and lost KT in the expansion draft. And then I just got a player that exudes those same qualities, but also does it from a position where they needed it at the point guard position in particular.
Yep.
So, yeah, this is for many reasons the New York Liberty are going to be very much in everybody's way again.
Well, and I will agree with you, SC. I think that when New York plays in in Phoenix this year, I think Mercury fans, the X Factor is going to give Tosh a very, very warm welcome back to the Valley.
Oh yeah,
They
You
love
better
her,
believe
and
that.
the fan base as a whole was pretty upset when that whole. I say the fan base as if that's not my brain. My brain was pretty mad about all of that. So I mean, if I was mad, I can imagine all of y'all were mad, just as mad as I was. So, you know, it was kind of the heart and soul of the team last year, and it does hurt a little bit. And I think, you know, we've talked a little bit about like the team's gonna have to find a new on-court leader, and I still think that is
It's not gonna be hard.
right.
That's not.
I still
That's
think it's
not
true,
even.
but
That's
I
not
agree with
even
Steven.
disrespectful to Natasha Cloud in
Agreed.
any capacity. But when you already have Kahleah,
Yep.
in addition to that, you also add to Kahleah with Alyssa Thomas, cut from the exact same cloth that Natasha Cloud is, just playing a different position. It's easy to pivot to that just because of what her reputation has already been.
I
So
also would
that was
argue
an important part of that.
Unrivaled was so important for Ka because I think that training with Angel really showed her what an impact she could make on young rookies. And so I think we're going to come back to a whole new Kahleah Copper this year. Just in terms of mentality toward like being a leader in the locker room. I think she's going to be more eager to do it on in a physical sense than just like last year where she was kind of passive with it all. I think this year, I think we're going to see Ka like more directly taking on a leadership role this year.
I think we saw it most last season with Celeste, actually.
Yeah.
Celeste quite often refers to both Natasha and Kahleah as her big sisters or mom and dad, if you will, or, you know, whatever their little relationship is. She always kind of speaks to them in an endearing way as if they're like guiding lights for her. She always leans on them, having conversations with them. Sweat equity built up at practice by going up against them day after day and naturally get more minutes towards the end of the season and them being the first off the bench to rally for her successes. I think that was a lot too. I think that leadership part in particular started with Kahleah her last season with the Sky. He transitioned from everything that was Candace Parker, everything that was Courtney Vandersloot, everything that was Allie Quigley in addition to all of that. That's a lot of veteran know-how, leadership, and experience between those three to where Kahleah was just able to simply play. And anytime she was chipping in with leadership, it was just an in addition to.
Yeah.
Whereas in 2023, she transitioned from it being an addition to now we need it on a nightly basis.
Leader, yeah.
Starting with training camp, the way you show up to practice, the tone you set there, and that naturally taking on the timestamp multiplier when it comes to games. And she's spoken to learning more about that and learning about what styles of leadership fit for her personality and leaning more into those things with the opportunities that games present in terms of learning in ways like that. And I think she's taken great steps in that since 2023. But yeah, I think this season, especially after Unrivaled, like you spoke to, is going to add a little bit more to that. I'm curious to see what younger players gravitate to her first. Naturally, if Celeste is still with the team, that's going to be one that consistently is there. But I wonder who else will gravitate to her because there are specific personalities that gravitate to Kahleah, and it's always the barkers. The barkers that let their play bark, but also get the team engaged in certain specific ways. They have a different type of motor with how that ticks.
I know that I wouldn't say we expect them to have like the biggest roles ever on the season, but I'm really excited to see how Celeste and Matt come out of their rookie roles and move in to hopefully a permanent position on this team.
Yeah.
I think they are really valuable assets. Celeste is playing her rear end off in Australia, and Mac is doing the same in for a Spanish team, and I know David knows the name, so David, if you can please comment. I know you know it, but yeah, she's playing her rear end off over there with Spanish team, damn near averaging a double-double, and you know, obviously overseas play is different than, you know, domestic, this, that, and the other, but seriously, I do think we can see some real growth in both of their games in this coming season, and I'm really excited to just have some fresh eyes on them in training camp and be able to see exactly, you know, what happened overseas, you know?
Yeah. I'm very curious to see Natasha Mack and just being healthy. I don't think
she's going to be at training camp because I think she's still going to be playing. So I don't know how that's going to play out. Girona. I'm sure I'm saying that wrong. But
I think that was the same team that, if I remember correctly, Rebecca Gardner was playing with them.
I do believe you're correct.
The summer before last, because she obviously got hurt last year, but yeah.
Yeah, and there was a lot of tea in getting Mac there because she had that knee thing. So they were really, really excited to have her. Really, really excited. They were devastated when she had a knee injury and she couldn't come. So I think, you know, she's super excited to be there. She's playing really well and she's playing a lot of minutes. So I think, you know, really valuable training for her and Celeste both overseas. But I'm really just kind of, like you said, excited to see what veteran they kind of gravitate to, which before we get any further, we said we were going to talk about her, and I guess we've kind of skated around her a little bit. Sami Whitcomb. Shane, could you throw up that tweet I sent you? You know, so Sami, it was the IBL. Am I saying
WNBL?
WNBL. I'm sorry, I can't read, and I have horrible eyesight. WBL MVP.
Yep.
She was, I'm hoping, yeah, there it is. She led the league in scoring at 21 points per game. She also led the league in 3-pointers at 3.5, finished third in assists at 5 per game, and tied for third with 2 steals and was 10th with 5.5 defensive rebounds per game. So, I mean, a very good all-around player. And above all else, let's talk about it, a winner. And I mean, she's done it here. She's done it in the WNBA. And I think she's going to be an extremely valuable asset to this team. And I think above all else, you know, I kind of talked about how Alyssa's probably not going to take any threes. And, you know, same with Kalani and Satou's. I would guess that Satou's points per game attempt is like 3 or 4. But I feel like Sami's is probably going to be upwards of 6. And so I think that is like Nate's going to find comfort in Sami being there and being able to kind of revert to his old ways a little bit when the time is right.
Yes. Just to speak quickly on Sami over in Australia, a legend, a true legend, has won and won across multiple years. And this season in particular, MVP of her team votes for a specific MVP for the team itself with the Bendigo Spirits. In addition to that, league MVP, like you spoke to, the finals MVP, and in addition to all of that, naturally also being a champion again. Like, that's so much winning. Like, I know people, the first thing they say, it's not WNBA level talents all over. Yes, but you go to your local rec league and you win time after time after time.
I'm going to be talking my talk.
Exactly. And that's also not easy either.
Right.
Winning in any capacity is not easy. And to be able to sustain it while also sustaining it in a way that aligns with the type of player that you are, you're not doing things that you're not capable of and kind of getting there, just kind of catching luck in a sense. I know, like, it's not that. It's very much with Sami.
They're not going on a Cinderella run in March,
it's
guys.
not that. No, it's not that. It's not like St. Patrick's Day type of luck. This is very much because she's such a great player, she's able to get more out of her teammates while also raising her level of play and doing so again in a championship winning fashion. And with Sami, in addition to the stats that you mentioned, she was also 4th in total assists. So that's like, that just speaks to her all around impact on the game. And do I feel like a lot of that will translate to the WNBA circuit again? Absolutely. I don't think she'll be relied upon in the same ways in which she was with the Bendigo Spirits. But that naturally just allows for her to lean more into her strengths.
Agreed.
And her strengths in particular, as a marksman, are as complementary to the top-end talents of the Big Three with the Mercury as any other secondary dynamic for anyone else that's on the team. Her shooting, the movement, the IQ, quick decision-making. She's feisty. Like, she might not necessarily be the biggest defender, but you're never going to have to question her effort. She also thinks the game a different way. And if you're talking about trying to contend for a championship, especially outside of your top 2 or top 3 players, you have to have players that have an IQ, mental stamina, and players that understand what the formula for success for a team is. And Sami is a player that's done that, like you mentioned, for quite some time now on the W circuit, in addition to the international circuit.
She's pretty much won everywhere she's went.
She's won everywhere she's went, which is how we opened the show with the top 3 players we were speaking to. Like, Sami just gets it. She understands winning. She understands the things you need to do to win and do so at a sustained level. And she has very complementary skills that allow for her teams to get there more efficiently and more effectively. And I think that the ways in which they can get usage out of her on offense in particular, again, to complement everything that the top 3 players do, is going to be something that really hits like a defense can't be right type of impact to an opposing team, because You help off of somebody. It might have to be Sami, but she's knocking down threes at 44% on 7 to 8 attempts. That's not something you want to live with, but you also don't want to live with Alyssa Thomas getting to the paint and getting to the free throw line and controlling the game in the ways in which she can. So I think that Sami is set up for great success with this Mercury team. As a secondary player playing off of the attention that those three get, I think she can run an efficient secondary pick and roll as well. I think the other big thing on the offensive end, outside of her shooting dynamics and the gravity that comes with that, Sami is an awesome screener. And in ways in which we saw Diana be successful screening, sometimes screening for Brittany Griner to get to post positioning, sometimes screening for other players guard to guard, and just kind of playing with switches and things like that. But specific to Alyssa Thomas and Satou, those are two players that have good handles. And if you imagine that Sami has the worst defender on the perimeter on the court, if she's bringing that player into action and they're put in a situation where they either have to cover for the person that's guarding them as Sami screens just to make sure that they can't just turn to get downhill, or if they outright end up having to switch because of Sami's ability to manipulate that context of play, you can't be right as a defense. Or it's like this impossible to guard it. And this inverted pick and roll, Satou and Alyssa have run it a lot, but they haven't had as dynamic a screener as they will in Sami Whitcomb to do that.
Well, and then you add to that the likes of Kahleah Copper, who's already one of the most physical players in the league.
Exactly.
I mean, how do you, again, like you said, how do you be right in that situation?
You can't. You have to help from somewhere to take away space on the court. And you do that, there are going to be consequences to pay. So, again, with the conversations about point guard play, I think sometimes we get too caught up in labels, and we're in an evolved state of basketball in general, but especially on the women's side where things are growing more and more positionless.
Agreed.
And it's all about creating advantages, manipulating space, and playing to a certain tempo that keeps a defense behind where your offense is. And with Sami in particular, she's a player that excels in those scenarios that their top three players can create for her to play in time and time again.
My roommate says, so do we have any draft picks left, or did we trade them all away?
Yeah, don't enjoy the draft as a fan, but there's not going to be anything Mercury related for you to glean from this upcoming draft.
I think I'm going to convince Steven to do like a mock draft for fun between the two of us, but it's not prevalent to us at all. So it's just literally for fun. Just so I can hopefully be right in a week, that's it.
I would say celebrate the women that are earning these opportunities to get from the collegiate level to the professional level, but it won't be pertaining specifically to the Phoenix Mercury this upcoming WNBA draft.
Well, I wanted to go back to what you said about labels because I was about to bring up Nekias' top 20 WNBA players list, and I was scrolling through it really quick, and do you know what he has A'ja Wilson labeled? The #1 overall player, by the way.
What you mean by label?
Like the #1 overall player, her position name.
Oh, it's just do anything.
Do you know what it says?
No, I forgot exactly what it said.
It says A'ja Wilson, big.
Oh yeah, That's it. Honestly,
that made me laugh really hard. I had to hold it in while you were talking because I'm like, Nekias did his big one there.
Yeah, for sure.
He really did.
It's not a way he hasn't referred to A'ja before, just because. You can't put her in the box. Same thing with Alyssa Thomas. You can't put her in the box. Same thing with Satou. He did
call her forward, but it's okay. I understand.
If you got to use a technical, it's not even tough. It's just the fact that her greatness is so abundant. Yeah, you can't put her in a specific box. Yeah.
Well, do you want to start with honorable mention, or should we start at the top of the list?
We can do honorable mentions and then work from the bottom up.
I didn't think. Do you want to go through the whole list?
No. Okay. Just the Mercury players.
Okay. Well, Satou Sabally, and it does mention in this list, she's an honorable mention on the top 20 WNBA players, current WNBA players, mind you. And I think that, Nekias starts off this by talking about how we only got 15 games out of Satou Sabally last season. And so I think Satou is probably almost the easiest add to the top 20 if you have the full 40 games of her. But obviously with the situation with her injury and the German team, all that, this, that, and the other, only 15 games. So I think, this season she has a lot of room for growth, and next season we probably do see her in Nekias' top 20.
Yeah, if she's healthy in any capacity, for one, that helps the Mercury in their championship desires, but that also firmly cements her in the top 20. She might be 15, she might be 16, she might be closer to 11 or 12 if she's at the peak of her powers. But I think she's in a situation where the team is going to need her to play to a certain level, and the team is also going to be able to allow for her to play to a certain level because of the context that she's going to be playing in. So I think come next season she'll be top 20. I'll probably even go as far as saying top 17, top 16.
Well, and I think when she's playing a system that's going to be built for like a player of her type, I think it's going to work really well for her. And this isn't a shot at the Dallas Wings at all, but I don't think that system was really built to emphasize the bigs. I think it was Arike and then everybody else, which if I had Arike on my team, I would want Arike and everybody else too, you know? But yeah, so I think Satou has the biggest and most easy route to moving up on this list. But then we moved to number...
We're real quick on Satou.
What's up?
The 3-point shooting. We talked about it on our last episode. That has to hold up for her. Last season, she was at 5.6 attempts, which ranked in the 90th percentile of the W. Do you know what her percentage was off the top of your head?
It was in the 40s, yeah? 43 or 48?
45.
Okay.
45. That 45% ranks 97th percentile in 3-point percentage. So top percentile in volume, top percentile in efficiency. That template, maybe on 1 or 2 more attempts a game and staying north of 40 is going to be the space that Nate is going to desire for her to be in to make this Mercury context work, because we talked about the way that teams like to try to defend her, to try to take away the drive. And the emergence of her 3-point shot last season to counter people trying to take away her drive, going under the screens, playing her off a step or two, her being comfortable, and her also showing to be comfortable and not taking those shots, first of all, in the Olympics, because we watched them when they went against the Team USA and she just had her way. Countering that exact type of coverage that we're speaking to, unders in pick and roll, unders off of handoffs, playing her soft in isolation, pulling up in transition. We also saw those same qualities that she showed with the Wings last season translate to Unrivaled. And I think that's something that's important to bring up while we're speaking to Satou, because that just means that as far as her skill development goes with that shot in particular, she's working not just the physical reps, but the mental side, processing it that way. If teams continue to give me this, I'm going to take it, I'm going to trust my training, and I'm going to do it confidently. And we've been seeing the results sustain across 3 different top-tier levels of play in 3 different leagues over the last, 8 months now, 10 months?
Yeah, for real. Yeah, you're right, correct, though. Between Unrivaled, the Olympics, and W, I mean, and now she'll be back in the W in a system built for her. I think it's going to prove to be really successful, I think, for Satou in particular. I think that this system, it's funny because when you listen to, the GM talk about how, like, Satou was a move, like, a long time in the making. I won't put a quantable amount on that, but...
You said years, plural.
But,
plural.
I'm like, years, bro. What are you talking... Anyways. But I think when... It's obvious that this team has desired a player like Satou for so long. It's like a no-duh. They're going to build the damn system around her. She's one of the most... They call her the unicorn for a reason. She's extremely, extremely versatile. And so building around her isn't hard because she can do so much. But moving up on the list. And as I was reading, Nekias put out a couple of days ago that he was going to be putting out this list, and I was like, all right, guys, like, let's lock in. Ain't nobody going to be keyboard warriors in Nekias' list, but I will be waiting for Kahleah Copper's ranking on that list. And as long as it doesn't say anything below 11, we're good to go. We're in business. And when it came out this morning, I just scrolled until I saw Ka's name, and there it was next to number 10, and I was like, oh, Nekias, thank you so much. I don't have to be sad or nothing today,
Well, I'll say about Nekias, we appreciate agenda-free detailing of this women's basketball sport, and we don't see or get enough of that, and especially from people that do it in earnest. So this is why it makes sense that he had his list come out the way that it did, because there's not an agenda that he's trying to play to. He's speaking basketball truth. Well, so salute to Nekias for that.
Salute to Nekias for the list in general, because I know I saw Miles Elrich, I think it was, that was talking about I would have never accepted this assignment, and frankly, same. I know the keyboard warriors are going to be out and in the ferocities of his comments for weeks to come, so just because of this one singular article. So
and that's because of the disconnect again. When you're speaking agenda free, you're looking at things for what you're seeing, not what you hope for them to be or what you want to put someone over because of non-basketball reasons.
I think we're going to have more ball knowers this year. I think Unrivaled's going to save us. I don't know for certain, but I really think.
How willing are people to be that, though? Because, again, you have to strip the agenda lens that you look at the game through to then start to understand other dynamics, like trying to put a ranking together without being biased toward 1 or 2 or 6 or 10 different players.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, back to the list. Kahleah, number 10.
Yep.
You got, and I'll just say who's on the other side of her on the list. You got 11 is Skylar Diggins-Smith, and number 9 is Jackie Young. And I actually think it's a perfect like spot for her to be nestled in between two players like that. Like, not that she's the same as them, but it's just a very true ranking, I think, to the three of them. And Kahleah is coming off the most productive season in her career, and still is, 10th best, and I think still can be better than she was last season. I think you said it last year at the beginning of the season, like she's only scratching the surface of what she can really, really do. And I think that still rings true, and we could still see Kahleah improve yet again this year.
We can and we will. I think that I won't, and this is not to speak down on last season's roster, but she was tasked with a lot.
She was.
And it was a lot in a unique way. And I think that this season she's gonna be positioned to get back to her roots as a true slasher.
Yeah.
And be able to play to those qualities in a more balanced fashion than it was the on-ball fashion that we saw her playing in last season. Tons of pick and roll like we spoke to when we were previewing her last season, and naturally that played out over the course of the season. And her having to figure out ways to be a playmaker and understand how to kind of wear the playmaking hat, but also wear the scorer hat and do it in a balanced way. And I think that this season now she's going to be unlocked to do a lot of the things that we saw her be a Finals MVP with in Chicago. That's clearly the template for her to be her best self. Naturally, she's a better player individually since then, a whole lot better. But you also get the growth, but also get what she is as a foundation as a player when you have players like Alyssa Thomas and Satou Sabally around her. Playing off of handoffs, being able to cut, being able to play in transition more, not having that on-ball burden all the time. But when she does have it, she has partners that can screen with her in ways that'll be effective as well. I think she's going to be in for another MVP caliber season. And at the peak of her powers last season, I think she was like the 4th or 3rd or 2nd best player in the league.
I would argue at the beginning of the season, you could argue she was the best.
She was the best for the first 2.5 weeks.
10 games, 10, 12 games.
Yeah.
I mean, Kahleah was playing a different brand of basketball than everybody else. Like, it was Kahleah, I always talk about South Carolina versus everybody. No, it's Kahleah Copper versus everybody. You know what I mean? That's how it was first 12 games of the season last year. And, I've spoken to her Olympic, journey and how I think that kind of affected her coming back, and honestly all of them that played in the Olympics. And I feel like if you look at the playoff runs of certain teams, you can see how it affected those teams, i.e. Vegas, even the Lynx, I think. But all that said, what
before we transition from Ka,
go ahead,
thinking back to that early portion of last season, you know what it was that was really standing out and why she was so prolific? Everything.
I was like,
it was literally everything.
Is there a trick question here?
Nah, it was everything, because it was the 3-point shooting.
She was doing
it. Was the 3-point shooting in particular. No different than I just got done speaking to with Satou. Teams trying to go under screens, under handoffs, player soft, and she just could care less about your coverage. If you're giving this, I'm gonna take it. And I'm going to shoot it with confidence, and I'm going to make it. And now eventually I'm making so many that you have to start to step up. You have to send double teams. I can just go by anybody whenever I want to now, and now everything is just open. But I think it starts with her being able to knock down the threes, no different than I spoke to with Satou. That first 2.5 weeks of the season where she was the best player in the league, like we were saying, and to bring context to that best player, she's averaging 29 points.
Like, she had 4 30-point games within that first 10-game stretch, I want to say.
3 of them.
Man.
Yeah.
Call me a Wikipedia.
And in addition to that, she was shooting 50% from the field, 29 points, 50% from the field, 48.6% from 3.
Yeah.
On almost 8 attempts, 7.4 attempts. That's the template that I believe Nate is trying to find a way to copy, paste, and then just add to it.
Yeah.
I think that's the goal with this roster. And I think she can more easily get to that kind of level of play with the pieces that she has around her this season. But for her, like I said with Satou, the 3-point shooting has to be at a certain level for the other pieces to hit the way that they wanted to individually.
It's kind of crazy because I feel like the general population, the non-ball knowers, maybe the casuals, if you heard that Diana Taurasi was retiring, you would think that the Phoenix Mercury spacing is going to get worse. But I think the Mercury spacing is going to be like tenfold better this year because they are going to have so many different brands of offensive threat. Like, how do you play off of any of those people? And if you have Kalani and you have Kahleah at the same time, like Kahleah can play on the outside, Kalani can play on the inside, right? It's just there's so many different things that they can do. How can the spacing not be better than it was last year?
Yeah, I saw, and I've seen people kind of speak to the Mercury in that through that same lens too. What I'll say is the spacing itself is going to be the same.
Yeah,
it might take on a different extreme, quite honestly, because it's year 2 of Nate being in the W and being able to kind of double down on what he saw for the film from last season that was successful versus what wasn't. And with that in mind, the templates for spacing as far as where players are on the court around whoever it is that might have the ball and whatever action they're running, that's going to be the same. And it's going to be easier for him to kind of hammer home those principles because of the reps he got last season in the film and numbers to back it up. What I think is going to be different from this season compared to last season, though, is that you have Sophie Cunningham was a top 5 in 3-point percentage shooter last season. Rebecca Allen is someone that can snipe. Natasha Cloud had a career best type of 3-point shooting season, especially that post-Olympic break going into the playoffs more than anything else. Like, you have to find a way to not necessarily replace that, but replicate it in some capacity based off of your roster this season. Sami is at the top of that list of players that checks off that box in particular. She can do everything that Rebecca and Sophie brought to the offense last season. That's why I keep saying also that with this roster, it has to be Kahleah and Satou that step up from deep in ways in which they've shown to do before, but it has to be at a requisite level for everything else that they want on offense to work, in the half court in particular.
Well, that brings us to our final point. Top 4 player in the league, Alyssa Thomas, walking triple-double. Y'all can hear me yell about that probably all season. Labrum list, whatever you want to call her. Alyssa Thomas is, I want to read this particular sentence. Remember the most underrated star argument I made for Nneka Ogwumike and that the player who has the strongest claim to that title was coming up? Well, we're up. And it's because she's finished high in MVP or Defensive Player of the Year voting over and over and over again and has yet to win either award, although arguably should have won both multiple times. But 3 years averaging 13.2 points, 8.8 rebounds, 7.3 assists, and 1.7 steals without earning an MVP or Defensive Player of the Year. I feel like that's a pretty crazy stat line.
That's insane to be that great for so long. And I have had one of those awards or rewards in particular be garnered. There's only one name over the past 4 seasons that's been firmly entrenched in that same conversation as A'ja Wilson and Breanna Stewart. And that's only Alyssa Thomas. Yeah. There's been a different name every season that's found a way into those conversations. Yeah. Kahleah Copper, Nneka Ogwumike, like we talked about, Fee, even more so than anybody else last season. But the 3 mainstays in the entire W the last 4 seasons, A'ja Wilson, Breanna Stewart, Alyssa Thomas. However you want to rank them, they've altered positions in the top 3 on a weekly basis over the last 4 seasons.
When the MVP voting comes out, it's almost like anyone's guess as to, okay, so Alyssa Thomas is probably going to finish second in voting again and not win the award again. It just feels like it's like almost a recipe at this point.
Yep. And if as quiet as it's kept, over the last 3-4 years, if you want to look at playoff win totals between those 3 players in particular, that player that everybody tends to just kind of pencil in as third has more playoff wins than one of the 2 names that people consistently rank so far ahead of her. And that gap that people think
I'm going to guess that you're talking about a Puma athlete?
Yes. That gap that people speak to as if it's just such a sizable one is not as big as people say it is, off of the impact, off of the way that she rises the level of play for her teammates. And that's something that she's going to definitely be 10 toes down leaning into with this Mercury roster.
I would argue that this is going to be the year that she really, really goes for that MVP.
If it peaks out, she should get one of those 2 awards.
I would think, yeah.
That's my.
I think it actually surprises me more that she's never won DPOY than it does that she's never won MVP.
Oh yeah, because MVP is such a narrative driven.
Right. Exactly. It's political.
Yes, very political, and it's hard to win. Just go ahead and say it's hard to win it if you're not in one of the mainstream markets for your respective league.
Or even just like a top contending team. And like the Sun, yes, they are contenders, but it was almost like a joke of a contention because everyone knew that they wouldn't actually win the title, I feel like anyways.
Yeah, it always felt like they were working with a harder deck than other teams did.
They were always the easy third or fourth, and never were they going to be that easy second, you know?
Yeah.
It was a straight cut, your bottom of the top four.
It was very, very tough. But that very tough also is very much what Alyssa Thomas is. And again, if this team peaks out to where their offense is at the level that it can be at and their defense is kind of dictating for everything else that they play to in terms of identity, she'll be in alignment with one of those two awards again. And it's just a matter of if the voters are paying that type of attention. I would love to have a vote.
Then maybe we wouldn't have to argue about like the winners, you know?
Oh,
because then
that will only be one of I don't know how many votes. It would be a step in the right direction, but it would still take more than just 1 or 2 or 5 people paying that type of attention to it. But evolution is slow sometimes. We'll get there. I firmly believe it.
Can we say like one more thing about the WNBA before we go? Because actually I meant to say it to you right when I walked in today, but you weren't here yet. Annie leaving the Chicago Sun-Times. Where am I possibly going to get all of my Sky news now? I'm so devastated. Obviously, shout out to our friends over at CHGO for existing and having the Sky show. But like, Annie, are we serious?
Yeah, she's not gonna be gone for long.
I know.
She's not gonna
I already
be
know
gone for long.
she's got to go somewhere, like not somewhere better, not to make the Chicago Sky-Tribune sound bad or anything like that. But I was so shocked and befuddled. I literally ran outside and I'm like, Matthew, I'm telling my roommate, you're not gonna believe this. He's like, who's Annie? I'm like, Annie, like she'd be asking all the questions.
That speaks to the state of media right now, and I don't want to get myself in any trouble, but you need to invest in these individuals that cover these sports because, for one, everybody can't do it. For two, everybody doesn't do it to a way that's not
fair.
Right. Exactly. So the job is not easy.
It's not, no.
And it's also we never get the requisite attention that should be gotten for a skill that's very, very unique.
Not only will she never hear thank you, she got immense hate for doing a very good job. So it's a tough position to be in. So I don't.
Yeah.
No shade to her. I'm thrilled. I hope she finds or has already found an amazing position. But I was just so flabbergasted.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, but it's very much part of the space that we.
She's done such a good job, particularly with the ownership situation surrounding the Sky, I feel like, and you know all the tough questions that have been surrounding that team. So it's going to be interesting now that we're not getting her.
Yeah,
you know.
But I mean, you can't say he's not going to get her though.
You're right.
So don't write that off.
I just don't know yet. Okay, and of course I always have Steven a call and be like, are you going to tell me what's going on? Because what the heck?
I ain't going nowhere. I'm looking forward to covering the Sky and the Mercury this season. It's going to be a lot of fun. Got two very fun teams.
I'm going to be mad.
I'm looking forward to it.
I'm going to call you a square. Okay. Well, anyways, I'm so glad we got together and did this today. We're going to be back to whatever Chris is talking about right now. I'm still mad at him over the Duke comment. I will actually never get over that. Permanently shunned. I'm pretty disappointed. And, you know, he DM'd me the other day like, oh, Duke. I'm like, stay out of my bracket, buddy. Stay out of my bracket. I'm over it. Anyways, nonetheless, I'm really excited because we're going to be back in 2 weeks. I don't have an exact day for you guys yet, but only 2 more shows after today where we're going to be every other week. And then before you know it, we'll be back to weekly and then twice a week before you know that is over. So we got more coverage coming for you. We don't want to overdo it right now while it's still the off season. So see you again in 2 weeks and then again in 2 weeks and then you'll have us more permanently.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to that episode before the draft. Not obviously because of what the Mercury might be doing in that, at least as we know now, but just because it's going to be a lot more, we're going to know a lot more about the NCAA women's tournament as far as how teams are performing, what players are stepping up. And I'm looking forward to speaking on that before getting to more Mercury news and speaking to what this team desires to have going into the season.
Hey Siri, play It's the Most Wonderful Time of the Year by Michael Bublé, please.
That's March. If you're a basketball fan, this is what we live for right here. This is what we live for.
I'm excited to wait. It's pretty rare that I'm like excited to wake up to go to my day job, but tomorrow I'm just like, yeah, let me plug in those 3 screens, buddy. Woo, I can't wait to pretend to be a project manager all day tomorrow, you know?
Who you got winning it all?
Huh?
Who you got winning it all?
For the men?
For
Or
the
the
women's side. Women's side.
I actually
So
haven't
women's
filled out my
basketball
bracket
podcast.
yet because, fun fact, I've been reading this book and I've been so into the book that I genuinely have very little other thoughts outside of it right now. I read BG's book in 48 hours last week. And after I was done, I kind of felt like my life wasn't worth living because I had nothing to read. So I had to find something new. Found this really, really intense book. And so I haven't had a spare moment to fill out my bracket, but I'm going to force myself to do it before I leave the studio today, and I will share it on Twitter. Before conference play started for women, I had pegged UCLA to win it all. Those 2 regular season losses to USC really scared me, though. Like,
as it should have,
frankly, because they're crappy losses. And yes, the Big Ten tournament championship was a good win. But in my head, like, UCLA was the team that was built for a championship. And, in the Pac-12, I watched Kiki Rice, London Jones, and all. As freshmen, they were so fun to watch, and they've come such a long way. They've grown so much as players. And so, I was really, as much as I hate to say it, I was kind of hoping for that UCLA championship. Do I think that's going to happen now? Not exactly sure. Essie, I'm down. I'm very down on the book club. Hold your horses on that. But yeah, I picked UCLA a while ago, but now it's like it's hard to bet against Dawn Staley.
That's one way to put
period.
it. That's one way to put it.
It's just difficult. And I talked about their losses earlier this season, but like those losses just make them better. And the only bad loss they took all season was, in my opinion, to UConn at home. And that was a horrible, horrible loss. But I mean, still, it's not like UConn's a bad team. Like, and I wasn't expecting that game to go the way it did. But I just, like I said, I'm so excited because I have no idea what's going to happen. Every year, I feel like I've known, like, oh, Iowa's going to do this, or LSU's going to do this, South Carolina's going to do this, or whatever. And like this year, I really feel, although I've watched more college basketball than probably any year before, I feel like I know way less going into it, which is a really exciting feeling to have.
So who you got?
I'm going to still say UCLA.
Okay.
I guess, because that's why I had picked a long time ago. And even though it's against my University of Arizona religion, I feel like I'm just telling you the truth.
Okay. I'll say that guard play always stands out on the women's side in particular come this time of year. So Notre Dame.
I knew you were going to say Notre Dame.
That's not my pick per se, but I'm just saying as a team to watch out for.
It could be, yeah.
Notre Dame, Texas with Booker, Taylor, and Rory Harmon.
I got personal beef with Texas.
I hear you, but again, teams that are well coached, well prepared, and have multiple players that can step up to certain levels. Madison Booker has been much maligned for some of the awards that she's gotten and why people feel that she wasn't necessarily deserving in comparison to others. She's still a gamer, and she steps up in ways in which we haven't seen from her position in particular in terms of dynamic. I would look out for Texas. But my pick, USC. If you have the best player on the court, it doesn't matter what else is going on around, what other teams may be able to take advantage of. When that best player is continuing to grow, and not just as a scorer now, it's never just been scoring with Juju. The defense has gotten so much better in decision-making and in leadership. The offense in terms of the playmaking off of the attention that she gets, the snappy processing speed off of the double teams that she gets. Like, teams have to game plan more for her than they have to do for the team itself. That naturally puts her in a position to put her team over the top because the game plan honestly doesn't even matter when she's seeing a basket the way that she does at times.
Have you seen GCU women's basketball play at all this year?
I have not watched them play, but naturally their coach gets a lot of attention for the high-level communicator and coach that she is.
Well, I'll just tell you, I think that game, their round one game versus Baylor, is going to be a really fun game. GCU doesn't have a true big at all. And Baylor
they're gonna make that game.
Big,
they're gonna try to make that game as ugly as possible.
Right,
yeah.
It's gonna be
for sure
hideous, but I think it's gonna be really fun to watch as a
GCU
fan
shoots
of
a lot of
team.
threes, though, right?
Yeah, no, they're
that's
high volume team.
That's the caveat. If you get a 17, 16
hot,
three-point make game in the tournament,
it's tough for me because I'm like, do I pull
tough.
for my in-state team or my in-conference foe.
Yeah.
Who do I pull for? I don't know.
Yeah.
I'll be honest, I'm pulling for GCU.
That's what makes the March Madness what it is, madness.
And I'm
because
low-key thrilled that Arizona didn't go all the way to the NCAA tournament. I'm obviously I'm bummed that they didn't go because I want to see them play against the best of the best. But I have no personal, even earlier, my little personal tiff with Texas is because they played at Arizona last year. And what do I care if they go on to win it now? I don't, So the personal beef is out of it for me this year. I'm so thrilled. I don't have to be butthurt if they lose in round 1 and then not even watch round 2 because I was so sad about what happened in round 1, I'm so thrilled to be able to have an emotionally disconnected NCAA tournament. It's going to be so fun for me. Ooh.
I have 2 more questions for you. What do you think about LSU? Just quick kind of thoughts.
I love Michaela Williams, probably one of my favorite players in all of college. And I love Flaw. I think,
of course,
that probably doesn't even need to be said. And I think Anissa Morrow is blatantly disrespected.
She's healthy.
I think so.
Okay.
I think she missed.
No, she missed the rest of the tournament.
Yeah, but I think they said that she would be back for the NCAA tournament, and I think same for Flage. But and it was just like a rest situation with Flage. But you saw her jumping up and down on the sidelines. I'm like, how much resting are you getting done, girl? You might as well play the game.
She's a gamer. She gonna be all right.
Anyways.
And then last one, TCU.
Okay, I'm gonna say my thoughts on both. LSU, I don't think it is a contender this year, but I don't think they're a bad team. Asia said it last year after the Aces lost in the playoffs, where a championship team just has a certain type of feeling to it. And if there's any team we've talked about that doesn't have that feeling, it's LSU for me. And it's not that, again, they're a bad team. I think they've at times been one of the better teams in the NCAA. But I think they did not have a very good out-of-conference schedule, which doesn't prepare them well. I think the SEC gets a little too respected, even in the college or even in the women's side. I know the men's side with them 13 teams making the NCAA tournament, like that's crazy. But like I think even on the women's side, it gets a little overly respected. It's a great league, don't get me wrong, but I think that arguably the Big 12 is awesome. Whatever. TCU, and there are some reasons that I think a lot of the general media that doesn't cover TCU exclusively has strayed away from talking about TCU for some really big and obvious reasons. But that said, I love everyone but one person on that team. They're so fun to watch. They are electrifying with the freaking basketball. I went to see them play at McHale versus Arizona, and I was so mad because I'm sitting here right at Media Row, and I see these boys walk by me with Arizona basketball gear on, and they sit next to me, and the first time Haley shoots and scores, they start cheering for her. And I'm like, y'all literally work for the basketball team. Like, what are you doing right now? But, I mean, it's just the type of, I hate to say it, motion that team has right now. And, Maddie Connor, she went to Arizona, leading three-point shooter in the nation, I believe. At one point when I last looked, she's from Tempe. I can't say enough good things about Donovan Hunter, ex-Beaver. I would be so overjoyed for 99.5% of the team. I love their coach. I think he's done a really good job. When you hold open tryouts 1 year, and
that's tough. That's tough.
I mean, Arizona did the same thing, and they're going to the WBIT this year. I mean, 2 very different tales of the same story. Do you know what I mean? And so, I think I'm rooting for TCU. Of all the Big 12 teams in the tournament, I'm really rooting for TCU. I really want Haley. I hope we get a Haley and Louisville matchup. That would be so fun. Man.
Very storybook, very March.
Yes. And if Haley loses, you're going to catch me at the casino, like gambling all of my money away because what the heck, like I'll just be so disappointed and sad for everybody involved in this situation. Yeah. But I'm really just excited because like I said, there's so much parity. TCU could go out and win it all. They have a good big and they have great guards, and I think that there are very few times that I can think of over the last, 6 years I've been watching college basketball this closely where I could think of 3 seeds and 4 seeds that really could go out and win the whole damn thing.
I think you said enough on both of those first. No, in a good way. I asked the question, I got thorough answers. But just with TCU, as I know we're trying to round out, Haley got a lot of attention for leaving LSU. And the terms in which she left, not necessarily in a bad way, but just because she wasn't playing to a certain level that people had expectation-wise for her. I think a lot of that was because of the construct of the team that she was playing with in the system. didn't necessarily fit like a puzzle.
Yeah.
It was kind of being forced and trimming here to make this hit there. Get to TCU, she's allowed to be herself more. Now she looks like a legitimate WNBA prospect. And again, we talk about guard play on this level at this time of year. She's a player that's in a situation that allows for her to be more of herself than it was last season. I can see TCU making some noise as well, in addition to the teams like Texas and Notre Dame that I spoke to.
The coolest thing to me about TCU, and like this just speaks to the type of player that Haley is for me. Earlier in the season, I don't know if it was before conference play started, but she had hit her career high record for assists. And, you know, the whole team came in after the game and gave her the stat sheet, and she just started crying because she was so excited about that. She didn't give 2 flying flips about how many points she was responsible for. She was so excited about that assist stat line, and I think that really shows why the circumstances weren't right for her in LSU, and that's, I think, okay. I think it's really important to remember that, like, the transfer portal exists for good reason.
Yeah, for sure.
If it don't fit, don't try to, you know, break your own arms to try to fit into a system that doesn't fit you. Go somewhere else where it might work out a little bit better. I think, you know, there's something to be said about making educated decisions for sure. But I think there's no shame in entering the portal to find a better, you know, situation for yourself. And Haley did just that.
Yeah. Paige gonna have anything to say about the
my
outcome?
roommate, he picked UConn and picked win the whole thing, and I can't say I blame him.
Man, I'll never get mad for somebody saying they think that Gino Auriemma's
and Sarah Strong. Listen, I think there's one thing about Sarah Strong. Okay, she had some really key plays in that loss to USC earlier this year. Yeah. And I think she will remember. I think she has bad dreams about that.
It ate away at her for sure. But what you get into, I'm sure, is what I'm thinking too.
But she's just going to be 10 times better because of it.
100%.
And so I think when you know this could be your last chance to play with a player like Paige frickin' Beckers potentially. I think that, like, how do you not go out there and just throw your whole rear end into it? And obviously it goes the same for the teams playing them as well, you know? But seriously, like, yeah, I'm really high on TCU. Like, and I was, when they were coming to play Arizona, I was like, oh, we could beat them. Like, I was trying to, like, boost myself up. But then I saw them play in person. They are hard. So connected, man.
Scrappy, too.
And, like, I think I've talked to you about, like, just wanting it and the pursuit of the basketball and all the non-stat sheets things that are important to winning a title. And they do all of those. And that's why they won a regular season championship and a tournament championship. And that in itself is a difficult feat. Ask South Carolina, where they had to flip the coin, okay?
Yeah.
Like, and that's not me throwing shade at South Carolina, but it's the truth. They had to flip a freaking coin about a title conference champion. Like, that's crazy. So yeah, it's a huge feat. I'm really thrilled for them. I hope Sedona goes 32 overall in the draft, but you know, shit in one hand, one in the other, and see which one gets full first. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
it's gonna be great parity. I'm looking forward to, like I said, coming back for this next episode before the draft to kind of look at how everything is taking place. I think that should be the week leading into the championship. Yep. If I'm not mistaken.
Some tourney talk.
It's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
It's going to be a lot of fun.
Be prepared for me to have all these words again. Like, you see how he just said 2 colleges names and I just started spitting out facts about them? Yeah, that's how I am.
That's because there's a lot of parity this season. It's not just one person that you can, or one team that you can just latch yourself onto.
I really like that Andy's Final Four: UConn, TCU, South Carolina, and UCLA. Obviously, USC's missing out of that, but I mean, it's going to be, no matter who it is, it's going to be a freaking blast. So,
absolutely.
All right. All that being said,
another bookmark moment in women's basketball.
I'm telling you, the numbers are going to be better this year. I already, I know that everyone's going to be like, oh, Caitlin's not. I don't care. Like, I don't care.
That's the thing, though. It was never about just one individual player.
Right. It was great outside of just her last year. And you saw it in the USC. Before I keep going all day on this very topic, y'all have the most wonderful day. See you in 2 weeks. If you need to tap in with me, at Erica Lee Day on Twitter, Steven PG3.
Steven PG3, you got
period. It. And then both of us together, PHNX _Mercury. You can follow us both over there on that. And we will see you guys in a couple of weeks.
We all silly like the mayor.